This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
One of the kind of things that I've been questioning today, so I've had a lot of experience with Sire guitars. I've bought a bunch of them, they've sent me a few of them. And I wanted to ask today whether the quality of these is sort of pro level quality. Now, the obvious answer is that Larry Carlton is actually playing these live. So in a way, yes, because Larry Carlton is obviously a more professional guitarist than almost all of us, right? If he's actually using them live, which there is plenty of footage of, then the answer has to be yes. But I would assume that he has slightly maybe different guitars than the ones that we end up playing. Potentially, he's got his own tech, that sort of thing. And if I was Sire sending Larry Carlton a guitar, I'd make sure they had a bit more attention spent on it, I think, than the ordinary run-of-the-mill Sire guitars. My experience with Sire first came from bass guitar. I was looking for something in the sort of £400 kind of range, either Squire or Sire, and I read up online and saw that there is actually a huge community of bass players that gig Sire guitars. Bill Banwell was initially where I think I heard of them from, great player from down this way, and he plays bass for Rag & Bone Man now. He plays Fender now as well, and Gibson and stuff, but he was playing Sires. I think they sent him one or two. I heard of them through him and bought a Sire Marcus Miller, the 5-string jazz bass style one. And I've actually gigged that when I was doing some gigs on bass, and I think the basses for sure I would say are pro level category, easily good enough to gig, and I think they actually sound pretty good and do a really good job. And people, I think, like the preamps as well. I used to just use it with the preamp off, but no complaints about those basses at all. I've played a few more of the guitars, and I've never found a completely deal breaker on them. I did feed back to the company that I felt like the rolling of the fret edges was a little bit extreme on one example, and it kind of led to you pulling the E string off if you weren't super careful. I fed that back to them, and I think that would be one of my kind of things that I would look out for on a future Sire. I've gigged this one. I did a gypsy jazz gig on this, believe it or not, because the gig included a drum kit, and for the Gibson Herb Ellis that I play, that would have just fed back the whole time, because as you turn the volume up with that particular guitar, it gets really easy to feedback. So I thought I'll take a semi-hollow and this did a perfectly good job of that. Plugging it in today, it's a bit tougher to play than I remember, and yeah, something about the way that this is fighting me back today feels like maybe it's, I don't know if I'd be able to play it for an entire kind of function gig, something like that. I don't know if you're an ES335 player, maybe you could chime in and, you know, do you find that they tend to have quite a lot of fight to them? It's kind of how I describe it. When I first played the Gibson ES335 that I borrowed off of Paul for a few videos, that was how I felt about that. That was strung with 11s, and it just felt like, wow, this is a thing. It may just be because I've been playing Les Pauls and Strats for like the last however long and not really picked up this sort of thing, that my hands just need to take some time to get acclimatized to it. I've also gigged the Sire S7 Vintage. I did like a little fusion gig on that. I had no complaints about that. That played really well. And I think that would be my advice on it, really. The S and T7, I think those are pretty much gig ready. And I'd say I think these are as well. The S3, I think the pickups might be the one thing that would let those down, like the T3 S3. Yes, you could do it. They are ceramic pickups, which are, I think, more likely to hit your stuff a little bit harder. So you might find them a little bit more difficult to balance with other guitars, if that's a thing. You might find them a little bit hotter output. Yeah, I think generally most pro guitars these days use Alnico pickups. Whether that makes a huge difference for you, let me know in the comments. But I put them on the sort of level of some other really good guitars, like the PRS Silver Sky. I felt in some ways like it was on this same sort of level. I felt like the Schecter Nick Johnson was maybe a slight level above, but not much. What I found recently that I was really impressed by, that I bought, was the FGN Telly. I felt like that probably is the best thing that I've probably ever tried under £1,000. So since I've been exploring this kind of area of the market, I feel like maybe the FGN might be my number one choice for a guitar builder in this kind of range. The Yamaha Pacifica is really decent, I think, and has some really good spec at this kind of price range. And I think I pick all of those as well above the Fender Mexican kind of player range, I think. Although they look really cool, I think some of them, the fret edges, I've found a little bit troubling. But, you know, if it needs to look like a Strat, I think I'll go for one of them. So, all in all, I think certainly a very good intermediate guitar. I think for the pro level, I think you'd maybe want a bit of work done on them, to be fair. Let me know in the comments and let other people know if you got one with like work needed doing. I know some people have said that they prefer their action a little bit lower, and when they did was when some of the problems started to creep out around some of the fretwork. Some people I've seen say they had slightly kind of flat fret crowns. Some people questioning whether they were crowning them at all. I've not noticed that sort of problem on any of the examples that I've had, but just some of the things to watch out for. And I guess if you're buying them new, you can just, you know, use your rights as a consumer, and send it back if it's not exactly right for you. Yeah, I think they look really good. If you get up really close on them, you start to see some kind of little finishing issues. Generally, I think like the attention has been paid on getting them to play well, and the appointments in general are pretty good. But I think when you get it up really fine and close up, you start to see some kind of finishing flaws, which at this price range is not necessarily surprising, I'd suggest. I found they tend to hold their tune quite well. This kind of quality and this playability, I think maybe you'd want to look like a couple of £100, £300-400 more expensive to be getting noticeably better. I think something like an Eastman may be a good shout. Maybe something like a Hagstrom. I think people like those as well. As I say, around this price range, the FGN stuff I've found to be really exquisite. I also think the Indonesian range of Yamaha Revstars are really great. But honestly, I think the Sire stuff does really perform pretty well. Let me know if you've got a recent one. I don't know how their QC is doing at the moment. I did read some things about the bases on a group, and a chap had 2 of them, and it didn't sound like they had a great experience. So that's a bit sad to see, but hopefully that's kind of not the general feeling that people are having. The H7V that I had, I was really impressed with that. So yeah, I'm still impressed by the Sire guitars, especially at this kind of price range. Let me know your thoughts if you've got any.